Hi, I'm Stephanie Vecchio, and welcome to episode 38 in our History Bites series. Today we will talk about the exciting history of the Olympics in honor of the 32nd Summer Olympics happening right now in Tokyo. While it is unknown exactly when the Olympics started, the Games can ultimately be traced back to Greece roughly 3,000 years ago. By the end of the 6th century BCE, at least 4 Greek sporting festivals, sometimes called classical games, had achieved major importance. Of all the games held throughout Greece, the Olympic Games were the most famous. Held every 4 years between August 6th and September 19th, they occupied such an important place in Greek history that historians actually measure time by the interval between the games, called an Olympiad. The Olympic Games, like almost all Greek games, were an intrinsic part of a religious festival. They were held in honor of Zeus at Olympia. The first Olympic champion listed in the records was Coroebus of Elis, a cook who won the sprint race in 776 BCE. As the games continued to grow, several different events were added. Wrestling and the pentathlon were introduced in 708 BCE. Boxing was introduced to the Games in 688 BCE, and other events like chariot races and horse racing were held in the hippodrome south of the stadium. The ancient games did not include teams or any sort of ball games, but they did have events for boys as well as men. The games were originally held on one day, but as events were added, they would take place over a span of 4 days, with a 5th day dedicated to a closing ceremony, which included a prize-giving ceremony and a banquet for the athletes. Most of the athletes were professionals who trained full-time for the games. These athletes earned substantial prizes for winning at many other festivals. While the only prize at the Olympic Games was a wreath or a garland, an Olympic champion also received widespread adulation and often lavish benefits from their home city. The Olympic Games would continue as the Greeks intended until Greece fell to Rome in roughly 146 BCE. After Rome took control of Greece, the Romans changed the focus and premise of the Games. The Emperor Augustus held athletic events, but Romans would not train or participate in the Games as they deemed them degrading, and the Games were meant for public consumption and not seen as competition. The Emperor Nero embarrassed both himself and the Games when he fell off his chariot during a race, but still declared himself the victor. Finally, in the year 400, after 12 centuries, the Games were officially abolished by Theodosius I, who was a Christian and wanted to end all pagan festivals, including the Olympic Games. The Olympics would not be revived for centuries. The modern Olympic Games were revived in the mid to late 19th century. Panagiotos Soutsos, a Greek poet, was the first to call for a modern revival of the Games and began to promote the idea in 1833. Evangelos Zappis founded the Greek Olympics, and the Games were held in Greece in 1859. Later, an Englishman named William Penny Brooks, inspired by the Greek Games, set up his own Olympics in 1866. Brooks's Olympics were initially a success, but the public soon lost interest. However, Brooks's Games earned the attention of a Frenchman, Baron Pierre de Coubertin. Coubertin is credited with the true revival of the Olympic Games as we now know them. After a discussion with Brooks on his Olympic ambitions, Coubertin met with the Union of French Athletic Sports Societies and advocated for the idea to create a truly international Olympic tournament. Although his fellow sportsmen were unenthused, Coubertin reiterated his proposal for an Olympic revival in June 1894 at a conference on international sport attended by 79 delegates representing 49 organizations from 9 countries. Again, the attendees were less than enthusiastic, but they nonetheless voted to hold the event. The new modern Olympics were set to take place in 1900 in Paris, but the members of the planning committee realized that 6 years was too long to wait. It was decided that the first Games would be held in Athens in April 1896, a fitting start for a Greek revival. There was resistance to the Games by the Greek government, but when a new prime minister came to power, the Games got the go-ahead. Before they took place, the International Olympic Committee, or IOC, was established. This committee, which is still in existence today, is responsible for maintaining the regular celebration of the Olympic Games, seeing that the Games are carried out in the spirit that inspired their revival, and promoting the development of sports throughout the world. Dimitrios Vikalis of Greece was the first president of the IOC from 1894 to 1896, when Pierre Coubertin took over until 1925. The IOC elects its own members and president and has complete power over the Games. The first official Olympic Games were held from April 6th to April 15th in 1896 and were opened by King Georgios I to a crowd of 60,000 spectators. These spectators welcomed 280 participants, all male, from 13 nations who would compete in 43 events including track and field, gymnastics, swimming, wrestling, cycling, tennis, weightlifting, shooting, and fencing. These games are officially known as the Games of the First Olympiad. With the exception of the United States team, all participating nations were European. In these first Olympic Games, the United States won the most gold medals, while Greece won the most medals overall, though they also had the highest percentage of participating athletes. The Games continued every 4 years in different cities throughout Europe. In 1908, the Games lasted over 100 days and are considered the longest in modern history. The 1908 Olympics were the first Games to include winter events, but they were not separate from the Olympiad itself. 1916 was the first year where no Olympiad took place due to World War I. In 1920, the official symbol of the modern Games flew for the first time in the host country of Belgium. The official symbol is well known throughout the world, with its 5 interlocking colored rings representing the continents of North and South America, Asia, Africa, Europe, and Australia. 1920 also saw the debut of ice hockey as an Olympic event. But it was 1924 that saw the debut of the Winter Olympics as a separate event. 1924 is also considered the year the Olympics took off in popularity and is the first year to have an Olympic Village, a small center with accommodations specifically for the athletes competing in the Olympics. And it was also the first Olympics to have a closing ceremony. From 1924, the Olympics have continued to grow in popularity and have become a symbol of athletic excellence, something for all athletes to strive and hope for. Every Olympics has its moments of excellence or even moments of solemnity or controversy, but some moments stand out more than others. The 1900 Olympics saw the first ever female athletes who competed in tennis and golf, and 1928 saw American Betty Robinson become the first woman to win a gold medal in track and field. The 1936 Olympics in Berlin are well known around the world, but particularly in the United States. Adolf Hitler had wanted the 1936 Games to be a show of so-called German excellence, and he would go on to find ways to bar Jewish athletes from competing. However, African-American runner Jesse Owens would stand out and secure a place in Olympics and world history. Owens famously won 4 gold medals and set world records in a triumph over Germany and Hitler, who believed him inferior because of his race. Owens proved the Germans wrong and would also strike up a friendship with his German competitor Louis Long, who didn't subscribe to the Nazi beliefs. After 1936, the Olympics would not take place again until 1948 due to World War II. At these games, English Dr. Ludwig Guttmann founded the International Wheelchair Games to help rehabilitate wounded veterans of World War II. Using sports therapy, he invited wheelchair athletes to compete, and the event eventually became the modern Paralympic Games. The 1960 Olympiad took place in Rome and was the first Olympics to be televised in North America. CBS brought the rights to televise the events and had to rely on recorded tapes that were flown in via jet planes to show the games. Abebe Bikila of Ethiopia won the marathon barefooted to become the first Black African Olympic champion. In 1968, at the height of the civil rights movement in the United States, Black American athletes were encouraged to boycott or protest the Games. Olympic gold and bronze medalist sprinters John Carlos and Tommy Smith staged a non-violent protest by raising their fists in a Black Power salute while the national anthem played during their medal ceremony. Although they were consequently suspended from the Olympic Village, their silent demonstration brought the American battle over civil rights to the international stage. Additionally, Australian silver medalist Peter Norman wore a human rights badge on his jacket as he believed in Smith and Carlos's fight. Norman was never selected to compete in the Olympics again after 1968, and it is unknown if this silent protest was the reason behind this decision. In 1976, 14-year-old Romanian gymnast Nadia Comaneci received the first ever perfect score in the uneven bars to win the all-around competition and went on to receive 6 more perfect 10s for events, winning 3 gold medals in the end. At the 1980 Summer Olympics in Moscow, Comaneci won 2 more gold medals and attained 2 more perfect 10s. After the Carter administration boycotted the 1980 Summer Olympics due to the Soviet Union's invasion of Afghanistan, the 1980 Winter Olympics in Lake Placid brought us one of the most iconic moments in United States sporting history: the Miracle on Ice. The United States hockey team were the underdogs in 1980, as they were mostly amateur students and the Soviet team had been incredibly dominant. It seemed inevitable that the Soviets would take home the gold. However, the United States team pulled together and defeated the Soviet Union 4-3. The team went on to win against Finland, securing the gold medal in ice hockey and uniting the country in victory. There are so many more moments to celebrate in Olympic history. To repeat them all could take hours. Florence Joyner, or FloJo, set the world record for the 100-meter and 200-meter sprints at the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics, and her times have not been beaten since. The 1992 Summer Games brought us the U.S. men's Olympic basketball team, also known as the Dream Team. The Dream Team's lineup was beyond impressive, containing the biggest names in basketball: Michael Jordan, Charles Barkley, and Patrick Ewing, to name a few, and they went on to win gold. Who could forget Nancy Kerrigan in 1994 coming back to win silver after having her leg struck only 7 weeks prior to the Olympics? And then there's American gymnast Carrie Strug, who tore the ligaments in her ankle on her first try but found the strength to fight through the pain, securing a gold medal for Team USA. During the Beijing Games in 2008, American swimmer Michael Phelps broke a record by taking home 8 medals in 8 days. Phelps now has 23 gold medals and 28 medals in total. Also in 2008, Jamaican athlete Usain Bolt became known as one of the fastest men alive, breaking the Olympic record for the 200-meter dash and the world record for the 100-meter dash. In 2016, Bolt became the first man to win all 3 sprint events in 3 separate games. This year's Olympics, still called the 2020 Olympics, is finally set to take place in Tokyo and is historic already, as there will be no spectators present due to the pandemic. Look out for Simone Biles, who will be competing for 5 gold medals. Sprinter Gabby Thomas, a Harvard graduate studying epidemiology, will be hoping to take home a medal. Swimmer Katie Ledecky, considered the greatest female swimmer ever, will be going for another gold. And watch as the United States women's national soccer team go for gold in hopes of making history by winning a World Cup and a gold medal back-to-back. The national team boasts some of the best players in the world, including Long Island's own Crystal Dunn. The games will run until August 8th. I'd like to thank you all for joining us for today's episode. If you enjoyed it, click like, and if you watched on YouTube, hit subscribe. See you next time.